today we are working on Psalm 123. A traditional use for Psalm 123 is to be in the company of kindness. You can also use Psalm 123 anytime you have to overcome a major problem, especially if you feel like your back is against the wall. And that's how I want to use it today. We want to use this Psalm 123 to overcome any problem. The way we work psalm magic is very simple. We take the psalm in question and we read it out loud all the way through once without stopping. This is called an incantation. Then we take that same psalm and we go back through it verse by verse, sometimes line by line, and we search for the hidden, occult meanings behind each of those verses. And it's through this digging and searching and applying to our issue that we've brought to the psalm that in a very real way we are uncovering the magical seeds that are inherent in that psalm. And it's through this process of digging, searching, finding, and applying that we also plant those seeds in the deep, fertile ground of our mind, where those seeds take root and they grow, they blossom forth, and they bear fruit after their kind. And that is what you and I are going to do together right now with Psalm 123. Unto thee lift I up mine eyes, O thou that dwellest in the heavens. Behold, as the eyes of servants look unto the hand of their masters, and as the eyes of a maiden unto the hand of her mistress, so our eyes wait upon the Lord our God, until that he have mercy upon us. Have mercy upon us, O Lord, have mercy upon us, for we are exceedingly filled with contempt. Our soul is exceedingly filled with the scorning of those that are at ease, and with the contempt of the proud. A very short psalm, very brief psalm, but a very powerful one. This is one of the Psalms of Ascent, and those of you who are working the psalmic initiatory path like to pay special attention to the Psalms of Ascent because there are a lot of initiatory mysteries within there. Let's look at these now, one at a time. Unto thee lift I up mine eyes. Now the eyes are, in the physical world, how we gather the bulk of the data that we need to exist in this world. But on the invisible world, the eye is the spiritual eye, the inner sight, the sight of the real world as compared to the sight of our physical eyes, which see things in the world of illusions. So when we lift up our eyes, we can lift up our physical eyes in order that our sight of the physical be replaced with our sight of the spiritual. And that is why we lift them up. We lift them up so that we can behold higher concepts, that we can behold that which is above and beyond what this world contains. Unto thee lift I up mine eyes. So we're lifting our eyes up to the Lord. Now, the Lord of the Psalms, we have to recognize that this is not a deity. This is not the deity even of the ancient Hebrew Bible. The Psalms we look at as being much more ancient than the rest of the Bible. And so God for us, or the Lord for us, is a pregender experience. It's a pregender force that is the source of everything. Everything that exists is an outpouring from the Lord. Now, because the Lord created us, we are like unto the Lord. We also are creative beings. We are gods, as the Psalms say. And that means that we have godlike powers and abilities. And we tend to misuse our godlike powers and abilities, and we create a world that seems separate and alone and far away from the God of our source. And this is our own doing. This is our misusing of our own powers. And that's how we create this world of illusions. And so when we lift up our eyes to the Lord, we are lifting up our eyes and asking that the truth of God replace the illusions of our making. O thou that dwellest in the heavens. Now that's who we are talking to. We are talking to God. We are talking to the source. And the source dwells in the heavens. Now for us, heaven is not a place. It's not a place up in the clouds necessarily. That can be a symbol of it. But heaven is not a place. It is a state of consciousness wherein everything is true. Everything is real. And it's where we actually live. We don't live in this world of illusions, but we are having a nightmare as if we are living in this world of illusions. But in reality, we live safely with the Lord. We live safely in heaven. And heaven is the realm where everything is permanently perfect. And that is our true home. O thou that dwellest in the heavens, behold, as the eyes of servants look unto the hand of their masters. So, thinking in terms of the time in which these psalms were written, servants and masters were a lot more the norm than they are today. The classes of people back then were very distinct, and so a servant, their job was to do unto and for their master anything that needed to be done within the realm of their job, and that's what they lived for. That's what they lived for. Now, if we put ourselves in a similar position where we are the servant and God is the master, that doesn't mean that we are lowly peasants and God is something higher. All that's saying is that we want to allow the ego mind, that part of our mind that creates and tries to be separate from our good, we want it to be subservient to the higher mind, or that mind which is already dwelling in heaven with God. We want our personality that we have constructed in this world to be the servant of our soul, which is that part of us which is always dwelling with God. And as the eyes of a maiden unto the hand of her mistress. So we get used to like the maiden to the mistress doesn't say, look, mistress, this is the way I think things should be. The maiden is always asking the mistress, how would you have it be? And when we get used to approaching God that way, what we recognize is that we're not lowly servants. We are actually children of infinity. But by asking what God's will is, rather than trying to create our own small will, which always seems to get into trouble, what that does is it lifts up our awareness into the truth of who we really are. So getting used to asking what God would have us do, where God would have us go, what God would have us say, those questions lift us up into the truth and dispel the illusions of this world. And that includes whatever problem you have brought to this psalm. If you recognize that the problems that we have in this world are the result of vain thinking, the solutions are the result of the way God thinks. And so God is the solution. God is always the solution. It will solve any problem, no matter what it is. There's no big and small to God. If we bring our mind into alignment with this idea of the maiden and the mistress, then we are always remembering that God will only bring to us the solutions. And if we instead are saying, no, I want to be the mistress, I want to be in charge, we tend to only bring ourselves problems. So our eyes wait upon the Lord our God until that he have mercy upon us. Okay, so our eyes are waiting on God. Our eyes, we are keeping our focus clear. We are keeping our focus steady on God, not on the problem. It's so important to understand this. This is the magical truth that solves all problems. If you can turn your focus away from the problem and turn it straight on to God, recognizing that God is the solution always comes. And you must wait. Your eyes must wait on God. So that means you keep that focus no matter what you think the illusions are, no matter what you think you see, no matter what you think the appearances are, whether you think it's getting better or worse or staying the same. You keep your eyes steady and focused on the solution, which is God. And the way you do that is by considering what the qualities of God are. So let's say, for instance, you came to this psalm because you have a problem with money. Maybe you have a big giant tax bill and you don't know how it's going to be paid, and you don't want to keep going into all of those fines and interests, and you don't know what to do. Well, you're bringing this to the psalm and you're saying, my eyes will wait upon the Lord our God until that he have mercy on us. That means I'm going to say, okay, God, this is my problem. Now I'm going to take my eyes off of the problem and have my eyes wait on you. And while I'm doing that, in order to keep that focus, instead of thinking about the taxes, I'm going to start thinking about what are the qualities of God. God is infinite intelligence. God is infinite spirit. God is infinite soul. God is infinite life. God beats my heart right now. God is what's causing me to breathe. God is infinite law. The laws of this world always have to bow to the laws of God. God is infinite love, and perfect love casts out all fear and all darkness. God is infinite truth, perfect divine truth, and that means that God's truth shines away all illusions. I know God didn't create this tax debt, so God's truth will undo this tax debt for me. And you just keep reminding yourself of what those truths are as you keep your eye waiting on the Lord, and that is the vehicle through which that healing can occur. Until that he have mercy upon us. Mercy, people misunderstand. Mercy in the Bible doesn't mean God's punishing me and then he'll stop. That's what a lot of people think mercy is. Or I'm so lowly and I'm so bad, and maybe one day if God has time and kind of condescends to it, maybe God will help me out. That's not what mercy means. Mercy is the fourth sphere on the Hermetic tree of life, and mercy includes all good. Mercy simply means the solution to your problem. Mercy simply means substituting out the truth for the illusion. And the truth is God's love for you. The truth is that God's will for you is joy. The truth is that God's will for you is happiness and peace. And so anything that shadows God's will is not the truth, and those shadows are our problems. But remind yourself frequently that there are no principles in shadows. Those things do not have principle. There is no principle of poverty. There's only the principle of prosperity. And poverty is not its own principle because it has no life force of its own, because it wasn't created by God. It's what we do to shadow the principles of God. That's how we get this world of opposites here, is our own need to have worlds of separation and experiences of separation. And so we create those shadows, and we do them very automatically and by rote. We don't even realize we're doing them because we've been doing them for centuries, eons. So when we turn to the Psalms, we are saying, I want something different. I want to see something different instead of my problem. And that's exactly what this mercy is. Have mercy upon us, O Lord, have mercy upon us. And so we are reiterating our will. Our will is to be one with God's will. We want God's will instead of our small will. God's will is the same will as our soul. And so when you come into this world with strengths and passions and talents and righteous desires, that is your soul's will wanting to break through. And that's what the mercy of God is. When we say, have mercy on us, we are saying, let me connect to the good, which is my birthright. The good, which is the truth about me, rather than these shadows which I am trying to create. For we are exceedingly filled with contempt. Now, for many people will come to this psalm because they are trying to reverse the contempt that they are experiencing from others. And that's absolutely fine to do. But we recognize here in this psalm that the contempt doesn't come from others. It comes from ourselves. And we're really good at projecting things here because that's what we are. We are projectors. And so when we project contempt, we do it in such a way that we think that we are keeping our hands clean, and we completely forget that we did it. We put ourselves into utter denial, which we are extremely good at, and say, I don't know what's happening. Everything is wrong. Everything's bad. They're so mean to me. I had nothing to do with this, that I'm a victim. I'm a victim. I'm a victim. And we never want to look at the fact that the contempt started with us, and the contempt for ourselves started ages and ages and ages ago when we decided that we wanted to see things in a different way from God. So remind yourself frequently, the only way that you can separate yourself and distinguish yourself from absolute perfection is to find ways to be imperfect. And so we have these ideas about ourselves that we're not good enough, that we're imperfect, that God made errors when God created us, and that there's something wrong with us. And we have those thoughts, and those thoughts are like viruses that create all kinds of problems for us. It actually creates this entire world of problems, and that's that self-loathing that we have learned how to have. And then a lot of times it's so painful for us to experience that self-loathing that we go into utter denial. We dissociate from it, and we pretend like we are just victims in this world. Now, the good news is that the soul doesn't have contempt. Your soul is not contemptuous. Your soul doesn't get attacked. Your soul doesn't need to defend itself. Your soul doesn't have problems. And so as we turn our eyes up to the Lord, if we turn our eyes up to heaven, we are turning our eyes back to who we are, how we were created, not this imposter self that we have superimposed upon our lives. Where we are exceedingly filled with contempt, so we're calling out to God to extract this contempt from us. See, because we are so good at what we do here. We are geniuses. We were created that way. And when we create a world of contempt, we do it in a way that's airtight, and there's no way out. So we can't find our own way out because we did such a good job at creating it. And now we're lost in it. But God's not lost. God doesn't have any sense of that. God knows that it's just a nightmare that we're experiencing, and that God can slowly and gently wake us up out of that nightmare, and that's what that mercy is. And also I want to reiterate here that God doesn't hold it against you. God doesn't have anything against you. God's not mad that you created any sense of separation. God's not mad, just like God wouldn't be mad at a child for playing toy soldiers. It's just a silly game. It's just a silly game, and God knows that you're fine and that you're going to wake up and all is well. Our soul is exceedingly filled with the scorning of those that are at ease and with the contempt of the proud. Now, on one level, like I said, you could be using this if you are at odds with people in this world, because there are people in this world who have a lot of privilege, who have a lot of things, who seem to feel that they are above it all and that they can abuse those who have less. So absolutely, there is that. But you have to recognize that ultimately this is talking about your ego. Your ego has this sense of entitlement. Your ego has this sense that it's better than God. Your ego has this sense that there's something wrong with everything and everyone but it. But at its core, it's insane. At its core, your ego is insane. And because it's trying to do the impossible, it's trying to create a world separate from the source of all life. It's trying to create a world that's separate from the source of all life. It's impossible. And it knows it's impossible, but it doesn't want to remember that it's impossible. And so what it tends to do for you is lead you on all kinds of journeys that cannot have an end. It always tends to tempt you to seek for things that you cannot find, to seek for love where it cannot be found. The only place that you can find joy, love, and happiness is in God, and that's where you dwell already. And so there's no place for you to go. There's nothing for you to do. All you have to do is turn your eyes up and let God do the rest of it. And recognize that all of these pointless journeys that the ego is taking you on is just to waste your time. And that is the scorning of those that are at ease and with the contempt of the proud. The ego is proud. The ego is proud. It thinks that it's bigger and better than God. And remind yourself, the only way to think that it's bigger and better than God is that its job is to try to convince you that you're bad and not worth it and not good enough. And so we know that God doesn't believe that about you. And so now we want to take our cue from God rather than the ego. And so just keep coming back to this psalm every day until you start to get a sense of peace and certainty about whatever the situation is. And when you get that sense of peace and certainty, you know that your spell has taken and you can just move off of that topic. Let it go, release it, and let it come to its own conclusion on its own, just like you would let a flower grow out of the ground once you've planted it. You can nurture it, you can water it, but you don't mess with it. And you go on to something else. Thank you so much for spending a little time with me, and until next time, blessed be.